So this is the part B at 15:20 hours GMT. That is the time stated as the time starting this one, but we are actually starting a few minutes early, about 7 minutes or 8 minutes before that. This is part B of the Khoodeelaar television channel, broadcasting only on the internet under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo editions, Khoodeelaar television channel, on Monday, the 12th of June 2023. Now, this one is timed to note the reports that the Italian fascist Silvio Berlusconi has died at age 86. And also the news item stating that Rishi Sunak and number 10 Downing Street bureaucracy, they have issued two kind of statements, both consistent with the evidence, the contents. And both statements are about Rishi Sunak's stand that Boris Johnson, in effect, is a liar. This is the first time that Rishi Sunak has stated anything like that. Of course, this is my paraphrase. The Rishi Sunak has said effectively that Boris Johnson is a liar. I shall read the bit from the Guardian Live, which is headed Boris Johnson accuses Rishi Sunak of talking rubbish about his resignation honours list. And previous to that item, there are three items on the Guardian website. Immediately underneath that one is the Sunak and Johnson in war of words over honours list, followed by the Tories speaking out against Johnson. The third one is Gove attempts to consign Johnson to party's past. Now, all these three items are significantly, substantially different in contents term before anything that has been seen in the past. This one is updated 6 minutes ago. So this being 15:16 GMT, the 15:10 GMT. So the Boris Johnson accuses Rishi Sunak of talking rubbish about his resignation honours list. UK Politics Live. Johnson says Prime Minister did not need to overrule Lord's appointment committee, but could have asked to renew vetting process of his appointees. And 37 minutes ago, former Conservative chair Jake Berry says Johnson forced out by establishment but declines to say he wants him back. And then an hour ago, two resignation honours lists. What Johnson was hoping to get from Sunak. And again, another one an hour ago, Johnson accuses Sunak of talking rubbish about his resignation honours list. And 2 hours ago, Margaret Thatcher would never have approved of Trussonomics. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan suggests. And 2 hours ago, another one, Johnson ally, what is the name of this peer? What's his name? Johnson ally, and I'm using the word as a quotation, don't accept the term Lord at all, but it's a Marland revives claim Sunak to blame for blocking some of former Prime Minister's resignation on her peerages. Marland, a Tory peer, former Conservative Party chair, and a supporter of Boris Johnson, has restated the Johnsonite claim that Rishi Sunak was to blame for blocking some of the former Prime Minister's resignation on her peerages. Number 10 denies this. In a statement, the Prime Minister's press secretary said, as is convention, the Prime Minister forwarded the former Prime Minister's peerage list to HOLAC, the House of Lords Appointments Commission, unaltered. HOLAC then passed back their approved list. The Prime Minister then accepted HOLAC's approved list and forwarded it unamended to the sovereign for their approval. He had no involvement or input into the approval list. I'll read that again. He had no involvement or input into the approved list. It's a point of fact that it is made public by the Commission if a Prime Minister overrules the Commission's advice. Now, the Guardian says, but in an interview on The World at One, Marland said there were 8 people who Rishi decided not to support for peerages. When it was put to him that Holak has said it removed the names, Marland replied, no, they didn't. They had the names removed on the suggestion of elements of the civil service, the cabinet office, or the inland revenue, as is often the case, and then Holak don't have to adjudicate. Marland also said Sunak could have ensured that Nadine Dorries, Nigel Adams, and Alok Sharma, 3 of Johnson's nominees, got peerages if he wanted to. He said, it's in the remit of the Prime Minister that if he really wants someone to become a peer, he can push hard for Holak to do it, as various Prime Ministers have done in the past. The Guardian says Marland is right to say that in the past, Prime Ministers have got people into the House of Lords in the face of opposition from Holak. But the best example of a Prime Minister doing this is Johnson himself. And these appointments caused huge controversy. He put Peter Cradas in the Lords despite Holak saying the appointment was unsuitable. Cradas is now leading a Tory group that in effect is pushing for Johnson to return as leader. Johnson also successfully urged Holak to think again, where it initially raised concerns about his plan to give a peerage to Evgeny Lebedev, the newspaper owner and son of a former KGB, well, I'll say KGB agent. Officer is not a word that I would use. Holak has not named the 8 people who were not approved for peerages on Johnson's list, and it says it won't discuss individuals. That's Marland's photograph there. Now, what I have to say, what the Khoodeelaar campaign has to say, is that the whole thing is corrupt to the core. There should not be any, there should not be any increase, even by number 1, to the membership, existing membership of the House of Peers. Now, at 15:18 BST, which is 14:18 GMT, there is a piece in the Twitter account of Pippa Creer, the political editor of The Guardian. And Andrew Sparrow says, my colleague Pippa Creer says, but the Boris Johnson camp seem to have changed their story a bit over the past few days. Replying to Pippa Creer, she is doing the thing herself. It does feel like Boris Johnson has changed his story a few times on this. One, Rishi Sunak edited the list from Holak. Two, Prime Minister edited the list before it went to Holak. Three, it wasn't Sunak who edited the list, but James Forsyth. And number four, we only asked them to re-vet Nadine Dorries and company. Now, these are the four listed items by Pripak Reader. And then there is this piece about an hour ago, which is 14:13 GMT, which is 15:13 BST. Two resignation honors lists, says the Guardian. What Johnson was hoping to get from Sunak. I'll read the first paragraph only. I won't read the rest. Boris Johnson's comment today, C 2.448 AM, about his resignation honors and his dispute with Rishi Sunak suggests that what he actually wanted was two resignation honors lists. Given his cakiest philosophy on life, my policy on cake is pro having it and pro eating it. This would be characteristic. Now, what this shows is that the congenital liar, Boris Johnson, is lying again. And this two honors list is typical of the two stances on Brexit. He prepared two speeches, he prepared two policy statements, either for the UK staying in the European Union or not, depending on, as the Guardian says, the cakiest policy, whichever suited him at the time. Now, as I was saying, this whole thing about anyone increasing the number of the membership of the House of Peers should be stopped, full stop, immediately. And the fact that even the Guardian is even bothering to talk about this, two lists, three lists, and changes, etc., is itself evidence of the Guardian's infantile stupidity about constitution, about democracy. The Guardian should start dropping all this and start calling for the end, absolute end to increasing the membership of the House of Peers. Full stop. Now let's see what the so we have been on air or on started broadcasting this particular edition 13 minutes ago, 14 minutes, 14 minutes ago. And we are going to discuss the Berlusconi's. Should come back to the disgraceful row Johnson is having about the so-called honors list. Now, Berlusconi is described in the BBC piece online what are they calling him? It's a David Giglioni and Sam Hancock, Rome and London, Silvio Berlusconi, the Italian former PM, who overcame various scandals to hold office 4 times. Well, they're saying it 4 times, and the others said it 3 times. But anyway, has died at 86. He died at the San Raffaele Hospital in Milan. In April, he was treated for a lung infection. Berlusconi's death leaves a huge void. Italy's defense minister said, with a national day of mourning due to take place on Wednesday. The longest serving prime minister in post war Italy, he had bounced back from sack This is the same line that the about Berlusconi. Now, forget about sex scandal. The fact that he was reported to have overcome corruption scandals speaks for itself. That Italy, politically, has never recovered from corruption, political corruption. And the political corruption in Italy is very much part and parcel of culture that Italian politics is dominated by. The racist culture, fascistic culture, anti-democratic culture. And the fact that Italy is as corrupt, as fascistic as it has been, is not an exceptional situation. This is the same thing that applies to France, it applies to the United Kingdom, it applies to Germany. To mention the numerically, demographically big ones in the European Union, or until 2016 when the UK was still a member of the European Union, but it's a cultural problem that the Western European countries have not been able to recover from. And despite the fact that these countries, at least the United Kingdom and France, played leading roles in the foundation of the United Nations organization, whose main purpose was to end what was happening at the end of the Second World War. End war. So this is connected, very much connected with the crusade against the Muslims. Racism and the hostility towards so-called migrants and the people crossing the Western European policies. The Italian regime, which is now fronted by the fascist, direct fascist, allowed the drowning of hundreds of people trying to kind of cross the sea from Turkey. And the same is the case with Britain, of course. And despite the fact that his language is significantly, intentionally toned down, France's Macron is as racist, as a crusader, as much a crusader as his counterparts in Spain and Italy and Greece are. So, despite the fact that they say that the Eastern European or former Eastern European countries like Hungary, Bulgaria, and others that are nearer Turkey, the Muslim country, they are actually culturally the same. And despite the fact that today in the news over the so-called resignation dishonors list, Rishi Sunak is appearing because I don't believe that he is going to stick to that stance that apparently being promoted today allegedly against Boris Johnson. Although he is appearing to be in conflict with Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak is a stooge. Rishi Sunak is a stooge for the racists, and he will only be in place so long as he serves the purpose of the racists who want him to carry on saying we come back to the stage row between the Johnsonites and Rishi Sunak. And there is this insert of the name James Forsyth. Now, James Forsyth is not an MP, he's not a member of parliament, he's not a member of the Pearson, but he is, I think, leading the charge against Boris Johnson because Forsyth is now stationed at number 10 Downing Street, the main political appointee by Sunak, who is the first and best friend. They've been friends, mates, since they were at college at least. So, what is happening in the United Kingdom is very similar to what is happening in Italy and what is happening in France as well. Who is in crusader hostility to the migrants from the continent of Asia and sub-Saharan Africa and other places. In all of this, there is no evidence, there is no sign that the political murderer in the United Kingdom of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, is politically alive. He has been politically dead, as well as the corpses of the victims of his murder. And while this stage row between Sunak and Johnson about the dishonors rages in the news, there is no sign that there is any alternative being offered by the so-called opposition. And the only opposition that exists in terms of numbers is, of course, the Labour Party. The Lib Dems don't exist because they don't have the numbers. They don't even have mentionable numbers, and there is no other political party. And with the arrest on Friday of Scotland's former First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, by the Scottish police investigating financial corruption in the SNP, it is worse than embarrassing for the Scottish nationalists or this to even mention that they exist. I mean, until Friday, as far as the London based, Westminster based political interests were concerned, they thought that Hamza Yousaf, who is Scotland's first minister from the SNP, was the biggest joke in Scotland over the last 50 years. Suddenly things have changed. So much so that Hamza Yousaf is being now even recognized as a serious politician. As evident in the fact that calls have been made by various quarters in Scotland asking Hamza Yousaf to sack Nicola Sturgeon as an SNP member. They would not have done that if they didn't believe that Hamza Yousaf had the moral, the democratic authority to do any of that. So suddenly, Nicola Sturgeon has come apart. And Nicola Sturgeon is a racist, as is every single Scottish SNP politician, every single Scottish Labour Party politician. And that's the reason why there was so much venom against Hamza Yousaf. Like the son of Sarwar, Anas Sarwar, who is the Labour Party MP. I mean, Sarwar is now probably the only one in the Labour Party in Scotland that just about managed to survive in this post. So the British politics is very much being controlled by racists, fascists, and anti Muslim crusaders, which means that there is no room for objectively definable democratic accountability and audit of the politicians, centrally, federally, regionally, let alone locally, for example, in Tower Hamlets, for example, in Croydon, in Lambeth, in Hackney, in Berkshire, so let's check what is happening on these localities before we close this session. So we shall be closing this for half an hour. And for the we shall make up for this lack of updates on the local issues because the internet connection is causing problems. We shall be doing that in the next available edition.